Welcome, Nnenna. It is such a pleasure and delight to have you on Audacious Conversations. Um, you and I were talking about just fun and serendipitous moments and things we have in common. I would love for you to introduce yourself before we go anywhere with something audacious about you.
Hello, Alina, and hello to everybody out there. We actually don't know who's on here, by the way. So something audacious about me is my hair. My hair changes every 6 weeks, and very often the color is quite radical. So I often have to reintroduce myself to people because I realize that people didn't recognize me. It took me a while, and I was like, I'm memorable. And then I realized my hair's different. So I do there.
Oh, I love that, Nana, because actually that's the first thing that I noticed about you as you came in. Is like, oh, I love that audacious hair of yours, Nana, and I know you through so many different iterations of that. So that's lovely. That's definitely one of, but probably a many, many audacious things about you.
Absolutely.
Now, sort of the purpose, the intention of my audacious conversations are they're live, they are unscripted, unfiltered, and they bring some of the most interesting and people that I love, and you're definitely one of them. To go with what we said, um, audaciously in the moment. So, someone asked me this question recently, Alina, do you ever worry how many people if they don't? And I said, no, because it's about, me or us showing up. That's all it is. And it's about redefining audacity
Mm.
under those three pillars of courage, care, and non-conformity, which you would know because, they're part of my book motto. So where does your energy go right now, Nnenna? Courage, care, or non-conformity?
I'm definitely in my courage era. I'm doing lots and lots of brave things. And so I'm digging deeply into courage. And I love that you've mentioned courage because I'll just get it out there. I did mention in the hook for this that I put on LinkedIn that your book is one of those, or if anyone doesn't know, Alina is an incredible author, as well as a long list of things, author of the Audacity Spectrum. And I know that that's a book that really um, has so many nuggets, interesting, like strategies, right? That force you and encourage and build that courage muscle. And I can't recommend it highly enough. And just extra plug because I should. And I want to, is that Alina just told me before this call, I didn't know, but that all of the proceeds from the book are going to charity. So what a worthy cause if for this professional group, if you're looking for a Christmas present. So please do it. Audacity Spectrum. I know I might embarrass you, Alina.
Oh, you have actually. I was saying, even for someone like me, sitting in the shit to receive, you would know that doing a lot of work with women, it's really uncomfortable to receive. So I'm receiving it with all my heart.
Incredible, incredible. I've noticed this, and we will have our conversation, but it's often easier actually for other people to describe you. We do such a crap, I'm the same, right? We do such a crap job of selling ourselves and what we want. And it's always a pleasure when you finally meet someone who knows you and can actually, communicate that authentically. So, yes.
Thank you. No, I receive it with all my heart. And it's interesting, talking about the book, there is a full chapter on advocacy. And when we advocate, especially for women, when we advocate for other women or other people, we inherently, without even realizing, advocate for ourselves, of course. As one of your values, I'm sure, is sort of generosity, is being able to advocate for others. And we were talking just before we came live about your 100 allies and what an incredible actually project that is. So why don't we, talk about that and what courage it took for you to go down that path?
100 allies is, I would say, it's an incredible story, I think, from my life of something that I just did. 100 was 100 allies. For those of you who don't
Mm.
know, it's a network where we basically turn generosity and expertise into economic value in the sort of beauty and consumer arena, which is where I work and operate. I came into beauty and consumer with no network. So yes, I had, 14 plus years of investment banking and advisory experience. But coming into this space, I came in as a founder, a beauty founder. I knew no one, had no network. And so I found myself learning from scratch, and I had to be courageous and vulnerable about admitting, going from boss to, novice who has no network. And so 100 Allies was really almost a culmination of what I wish I had coming into the sector. And that was a space where I could be vulnerable. I didn't have to have it all figured out. And it wouldn't be also a mark that I'm less than, in that sense. It's just what it is. I'm just early on this particular journey. And if there's brilliance, brilliance is going to come. And I just wanted people who would meet me at that place. But also, I wanted to be sure of the expertise that I was going to get, because I met a lot of sharks along the way who are just average. They charge a lot, like I call them rent seekers, and they would charge a lot and you get nothing really. So we've really curated an incredible network of really experienced, quite senior. I've been so lucky actually with the caliber of experts we've been able to create. A friend of mine called it a Mr. and Mrs. Smith type club of mentoring. And that's what we do. It's very curated, but also and all of this is funded from generosity. There's no single funding. Of course, we have partners who give us space and budget for the clinics that we host, but it's really an incredible project of the power of generosity and the power of impact when it's organized well. And I keep learning from this clinic. There's so much more to it, but that's the headline.
Oh, I love that, Nnenna, actually, because that's probably one of the many things that you and I have got in common, and this is a sort of generosity of spirit. And for me, I have such a strong belief system that you give with one hand and you receive with two hands. That's how I grew up. That it will, and you and I were. It will return. That return on investment. It might not be immediate.
It already is. It really, honestly, it already is, just in the sector, because I'm an independent, right? I don't have any big brand or office or, name behind me. And just in terms of impact, because we had our last clinic of the year in November. Sorry, not November, in October. And I was looking at the numbers in just 3, let's say 1 hour slots. We have made like over 350 connections in that period, in the whole cohorts that I've been able to measure. And don't forget, a lot of what happens outside. We pretty much plant the seeds in our clinics, and then the ripples created, like over 1,000 hours. I met a woman at an event the other day who just came to me and she was like, "No, I was celebrating. I didn't have to, when I saw cycle 3 come up, I didn't have to go, because when she had joined us, she'd just been made redundant. She was, dealing with all of that. And actually she has an incredible role right now as a big shot at Body Shop. But it was all orchestrated from a relationship that she formed in that clinic. And there are so many other wonderful stories like that. In terms of me getting, I think most people don't know who Nnena Onuba is in my sector. But the moment I often forget actually, because I have a portfolio career, right? 100 Allies is just one of the things I do. I call it my dessert on my sort of balanced diet portfolio career plate. But when most people don't know who I am. And then I say, I've heard about that. And I was like, oh, look at that. 100 Allies is opening doors for me. It's validating me.
It is. It's community and it's connection.
Interesting. Actually. It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially now, we're talking in this world where, everything it's so fast, it's so automated. And, one of your other many hats, it is just, enabling AI. And we can talk about that if you feel called. But, connection and community, it's definitely at the core, in my opinion, anyway.
Look, I believe, in this what AI is doing for the world right now is disintermediating the knowledge economy, right? So previously you could keep people out of rooms because they weren't smart enough, right? And everybody can now jump on ChatGPT and boop, 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 immediately So I think what's in like a increasingly over time, an important differentiator will be authenticity. Who
Mm-hmm.
are you? Who are you? What's your community? All of those things will become more and more important. We talk about personal brand, but I talk about personal brand in this sort of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Will be more and more important to how we interact with each other, how we curate, and how everybody becomes a tastemaker, right, of
Mm-hmm.
sorts. And who follows you, what you create, all of those things become increasingly more important to differentiate people if everybody is smart, right? So um, I think it's an early bet, but a good one, unintentional, but I'm glad.
Yeah, no, totally. And actually, I was saying, maybe before we move on to something else on your different portfolio careers, just to finish off with the 100 allies, is there anything in particular, I suppose, for anybody who will be listening to this, that you're looking for um, when people are approaching you for that? What exactly in terms of expertise, or who would you love to?
Honestly, 100 allies is a machine that sorts itself out. It's very fortunate. I don't have to worry too much about it because it's a very simple model, right? I
Mhm.
said we run our hero product now. We
Mhm.
started with lots of things. It's like any
Mhm.
other startup. I had big ambitions up to the sky, and then the world corrected it to where it needed to get to. So our model now is we run clinics, like a triage clinic, where
Mhm.
you come with problems and we connect you with experts. We now have over 75 who have volunteered in our
Mhm.
clinics. And
Mhm.
people tend to come because they're referred by
Mhm.
somebody else. So we
Mhm.
actually have more demand than we know what to do with on both
Sure.
sides, actually. Because again, they're spot events. All three clinics have sold out in under 48 hours. And it just looks after itself. So right now, there's nothing specifically relating to 100 allies beyond saying if anyone is in that sort of consumer space. And
Mhm.
one of the things that differentiates us to anything else is that we are radically inclusive. You can come however you are, whatever stage you're at. If you're thinking about things, just as you are, and we will find a way to support you. And there's almost a practical and real element to it. We don't pretend that we're going to change your life. Our role is literally like any triage clinic, is
Mhm.
just to get you to that next step. If you're feeling stuck on something, hopefully you have a conversation in there that just unlocks one thing. And often that's what we need, right, for momentum. And it's such an important and underserved service. I didn't realize it until we started doing it repeatedly. And I was like, wow, because everyone waits, right? I'm going to get funding. I'm going to get this. I have to solve big problems. And we don't give enough value to the little things that add up, that just move people along. And actually more of those little things, I think, move the needle than waiting for that one big moment that may or may not arrive.
Absolutely. It's the 2%. Actually, that's in my work. I always use that metaphor. It's absolutely the 2% movement that will move the needle. And I absolutely love, Nana, your description of radically inclusive, and what differentiates,
Mm,
your work, especially in that 100 allies
mm.
to others. But I am very curious to find out about what is your most audacious project right now, because I know you've got lots. I mean, that's one of your biggest superpowers, but what's on your top of mind right now?
Um, there are a few things, but maybe I'll talk about two things in particular because portfolio careers is not something that anyway I had coming up heard about very much beyond, oh, okay, when people stop working and they retire, they have a portfolio career, which means you become a non-exec and that's your retirement job. And in this way, and I think I'm sort of a bit of a rule breaker because I still think I'm in my prime of work. um,
So, yeah.
and I built a portfolio career because I sort of realized quite at some point, not early on, but at the right time for me, that I must think of my career as two halves, right?
Mhm.
I'm post 40, and this post 40 age, and I realized that actually I was more likely to have more success with my future in my own hands. I
Mhm.
don't fit very neatly into many boxes. And this portfolio career allows me to have a little bit of what I like, but actually at the core of it is the freedom to experiment and really discover where my superpower and genius lies.
Mhm.
And it's made me incredibly, incredibly passionate about experimentation. This 10, anyone who's ever been a founder, there's a book that I think very early on this journey I read. It's called The Lean Startup. And
Mhm.
actually, at the heart of it is this model, right? You need to test, learn, iterate, and that needs to keep looping all the time. But we talk about it abstractly. Very few people actually do this in reality. But this model in how I'm choosing my career has led me from entrepreneur, investor. I pick up M&A, which is like my core skill set, and it's morphed. And coming back to answer your question is I've been on an incredibly interesting journey because I'm in beauty and consumer, but not in a traditional way.
Mhm.
I sort of sit at the intersection of a few skill sets. I know finance incredibly well and like big corporate value creation incredibly well. But I also understand the founder lifestyle, right? I had a brand, I took it to market, I had to learn Amazon. So I've lived, there's a lot of lived truth in that. And then also because I started investing as well. So the whole, what does it take to put a check? How do I create value from my investment? So when you put all of those things together, as well as this 100 Allies ecosystem, I realized that I was seeing the world of beauty and consumer through this lens in a way that few people do. And everything I looked at, and I was just like, there is so much value that leaks, like wasted and squandered
Mhm.
because we are, I don't want to use the word efficiency, but I'll call it drag, slow to making decisions because everyone's waiting for it to be perfect in a sense.
Mhm.
And so, in actually starting with 100 Allies, which was just about, look, how do we get more of these in a very fragmented category where lots of people who are building are founders, right? We have
Mhm.
45,000 brands in this category alone. Um, and I was like, lots of people are working in this fragmented, siloed ways. How do we build a centralized, shared operating system that sort of starts to remove some of these mistakes and trial and error things that everyone is doing? So actually, what I'm working on now is a new operating system that blends both automation, operational expertise, all of the gifts that AI and the many tools that it's provided for us bring to really dealing with some of those mistakes and tweaks that erode value, like all the things that lots of people don't know yet, but really ought to know because the expertise is out there, but it's just sitting in buckets that you can't really see easily, and making that accessible as tools, diagnostics, and the expertise layer. So it's quite exciting because but it's also what I love doing. I love taking problems. I love making things happen, and I believe a lot in the impact that this is going to have because actually it's not just a CPG problem. We're going for a 257 billion a year productivity. That's how much the UK loses every year in productivity related, from slow decision making, misalignment, all
Mhm.
of those sorts of things that really, really, you don't, it's not visible, right? Like
Mhm.
a launch that, but they all leak value in multiple ways. So this is what I'm working on. This is my passion project. And my hope, actually, my big vision hope for doing this, and this is how it aligns with purpose. I know I'm in the audience of someone who, I can have this conversation authentically with, is this is a category that's incredibly inclusive. We employ a lot of women in the sector I'm in, which is just one of the many in this 280 billion category.
Mhm.
However, it's perceived as risky. by many investors. And so we don't attract the same sort of funding as, say, tech or some of those other automated sectors do. So my hope is that in removing some of the risk around execution, because instead of, as an investor who's writing a check now, you are not just making the bet that this brand is going to sell lots of products. There's a lot of value that leaks from, oh, I don't know if this is the person who's going to be able to spend the money effectively to get me the returns I want. So by arming the sector with a professional execution sort of operating system, we remove some of that risk. And my hope is that we can then see more capital flow into the category because we've de-risked some of that. My hope, and then fund many more incredible women and people on the margins, and just it's inclusive in every single lens you look at it, and that for me is quite exciting.
Well, it is so exciting, and it's interesting again. I mean, it's the beauty and consumer sector. Obviously, as you said, you are an expert in that, and wow, in terms of the 280 billion, I think you said, it's interesting because you were mentioning. I don't think you mentioned now, but the word waste and the problem. And what came to mind is I have a dear friend in my community of high impact leaders, Rita, and this is her IP. That's how she talks to the world. What is this problem designed to solve in your world? So I'm curious, what comes to mind as I'm asking that question for you with beauty, consumer fragmentation, and everything that's happening there, and the excitement that comes with it?
I'm not sure I'm very clear on what that.
So what's that? Because you said, what's the problem? What's this?
What's the
What's
problem?
the problem that you've got that is designed to solve for your industry?
There is a lot of waste that happens from
Mm-hmm.
people repeating the same activity that could be automated, or making the same mistakes, which is there are almost two ends of the funnel where it breaks, right? So on the small end, lots of people are trialing and erroring.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they're building their businesses. But you don't have to trial and error things that actually experts know how to do. So let's give them the playbook so that at least we can fast track what is an instinctive and the magic that people come with. Yeah. So that's one end. On the sort of bigger end of the funnel, the drag that happens is actually what is the cost of slow decision making when you have feedback loops that are so slow in a sector. And the reason why it matters so much for consumer is that consumer is very fast, right? Because of the creator economy, TikTok, all of those things, right? Trends now happen in weeks. And if you miss it, you miss it. So, and that's actually the problem we see a lot, which is why actually majority of the growth in this category is coming from young, agile disruptors who come and are able to take market share because they're just closer to the consumer. They make decisions in days and boom, product is there and they're telling you to buy it on TikTok. And so on that end is how do we build more, I don't want to use the word agility because it's not just agility, it's about learning speed. And there in those two, I can give very practical examples, but I would just say, please go to Brand Playbook on Substack because I'm spending a lot of time to build a thought leadership around all the different ways that value leaks that we're going for. And it's a big number and it's a UK wide problem. It's not just a consumer problem, right? It's about execution in general. How do we build an operating system so that people can just build businesses more, but build businesses with expertise? So I'm not trying to be a Shopify or one of those sorts of platforms. What we focus on is expertise, proper operational nonce. And this also includes a lot of financial stuff that you and I both know incredibly well. But actually in this sort of sub-creative space, a lot of entrepreneurs who usually come because they're great with products, right? Or they come with great with marketing and community and brand building. But the business end of what makes it tick, actually, which is so important to investors, often is missed out. It's missed out, and unfortunately, in the way investment is structured in this sort of VC model, and I call VC as one way of investing. It's not the only model for investing, but the VC model is actually betting on unicorns, right? So they only need one unicorn to emerge, and it's let's call it one out of they only need 3% of their portfolio more or less to win. And what happens is they can write the first check, But if you're not performing, they just leave you behind. So no one is really invested in the expertise and supporting it. Whereas by the time you get to private equity, which is a bit more in the middle, right?
Mhm.
Private equity really care about management. They operationalize
Mhm.
teams, and that's. But at that stage, look what's happening in our funnel. It's so thin and narrow on the beginning entry point. Whereas actually, if you supported some of that professionalization early on the
Yeah.
funnel, it will
Mm.
make it wider. More people come through, and there's more opportunity. And actually, by the time it gets to big CPG, it's actually also easier for them to digest when
Mm.
it's in that M&A world, which is it's broken. Brand playbook on Substack. I promise you. All I've been writing cool essays, and I have these. I have my LinkedIn carousels are fun. It looks like a magazine, and I really enjoy the design process of that. We're making sort of incredibly intellectual and business things accessible, and
Mm.
that makes me excited.
Oh, I love that brand playbook on Substack. That's, in terms, it's great. It's great for anybody who's watching now or later to go and check it all out. And you said something that really just stopped me in my track, actually, Nnenna, because it is one of this thing about making fast decisions is interesting. In the world of finance that you and I know intimately well, sharing, our experience at Rothschild is, that's sort of very fast. You need to make decision fast. And I was the head of trading, so that's well, it is my superpower. I love to make fast decisions, almost to a fault. So I've just learned I have to learn to sort of slow down, because there is definitely a benefit to also slow it down. Not always just
Absolutely, absolutely.
and but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I am, again, for the audience, for anybody who's sort of watching, I am doing a live workshop on the 14th of January, which is called 20 Seconds of Courage, which is all about, decision making that is fast and it's also thoughtful, which is a paradox in itself. But how do you do both? So,
Absolutely. But also necessary, right? Because that's the tension in big organizations. I don't sit here and thinking, because actually what makes them great at what they do is all of the processes and the due care with which these decisions are made. And that's what execution, control, repeatability matters. But in a creative world, you need to make room also because the world is changing. So how do you adapt? So back to your question, I think if there was one word, we're basically building the adaptability operating
mm,
system that takes 20th century operating systems that are now in the 21st century. And how do you sort of bridge that gap in a way? But you're spot on. There is, I think it's think fast, think slow, which actually talks about how the brain works as well. In that sense, it is very topical and interesting.
yeah, and a lot of my clients, actually, is this sort of decision paralysis. A lot of them are really struggling right now, which is an interesting dilemma, in many ways. But and actually, there is another quote that I use over and over again. I don't know who it is attributed to, but it is that the antidote to uncertainty, which is a lot right now, it's not certainty, it's creativity. So you've got to stay creative. So one of the, I'm very curious, and I'm we sort of getting almost to the end of this conversation, which could probably last another 2 hours. No, but given I've sort of mentioned from Rothschild, what did you take? What's the biggest, I would want to say audacious thing, but what's the biggest thing that you took from there, from that time there, to what you're applying to your creative world today? One thing.
One thing, I mean, there's so many, but
I know.
one thing, I'd say it's the discipline and
Mm,
rigor, right? Because at Rothschild, I did M&A. M&A was all about running incredibly complex processes, and but not just in a, oh, I'm just going to push paper, but from a commercial
mm,
perspective, right? How do I hold on to value in a negotiation where I need the other side to move, but I'm also running big different teams, multifaceted, multi-process. So you, in fact, I think that's, if I was to, it's that sort of, so it's the discipline, but also the ability to be a little bit of a generalist, because you kind
mm,
of have to be good at you need to understand what the lawyers are doing. You need to understand what the accountants are doing. You need to understand your client's business, which in my case changed, right? Because I worked across a few different sectors. And so it's that speed to actually cut through whatever sector, TLDR, what's the point of it? What's the value creation story? How do I get two ends of it to move so that my client and the value I'm trying to get for my client is what is winning all the time? And it's such a unique skill set, and I can't put it into words, but it gives me a lot of courage into, and also versatility to take on anything really.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the word that you use is rigor. And I would probably say the same. I mean, there are many, many things, but that's sort of one thing I've learned over those sort of 15 years. It's rigor, and I've taken it over and really applied to this, entrepreneurship that you and I have been in together in sort of different paths, is just to apply the same rigor and with creativity, which is
absolutely, and that's the best part, and that's what's intrinsic. It's intrinsic, and that's the bit I've allowed myself to explore. What does my creativity look like? And it's been incredible journey.
Oh no, I love it, and I am. We are at time. I'm actually very excited as you were talking. I could just feel myself, really getting filled with excitement. So I can't wait to.
Neither can I.
We're going to have this sort of follow-up conversation in a year time. As that's not something.
I'm talking a lot on LinkedIn, so if anybody follows me, they'll get the gist.
Fabulous. Well, definitely Substack for you, for anybody who just wants to go and check that one out. I haven't yet, for me, there are too many things, so I haven't yet taken Substack. So I have a newsletter called Audacious Leadership on LinkedIn. That's at the moment, that's where I'm still staying. But let's continue the conversation. Let's continue in a year time. So thank you so much, Nnenna. Thank you
so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you. And thank you all who have